Hello. Is this on? Okay, cool. Hello and welcome to the 2024 Latinx Kidlit Book Festival Writers Night and the Mistakes Were Made panel. Before we begin, please read our anti-harassment policy in the chat box. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Latinx Kidlit Book Festival's YouTube channel. And if you're a school, classroom, librarian, or educator joining us, our school visit fund is back. You can enter to win a free visit from a Latinx author or illustrator for your classroom or library. You can find the link to the entry form also in the chat. And shout out to our partner and sponsor tonight, the Authors Guild. The Authors Guild serves working writers by supporting free speech, fair contracts, and copyright. They provide community for professional authors and help fight for a living wage. You can find out more at authorsguild.org. I'm Johnny Garzavilla, and I have the honor of moderating tonight's panel with some incredible friends of mine. And I think I'll just get right into letting them introduce themselves, who you are, the books you write, the sort of like general themes, representations of your stories, and any sort of like awards and successes that your stories have brought and won. We'll like do like a little like alpha. We'll go with Aaron first.
Cool. My name is Aaron H. Aceves. I'm the author of This Is Why They Hate Us, which is a young adult contemporary novel about a bi-Mexican kid growing up in East LA. I'm a creative writing professor at UT Austin. That's my current job, and a cat dad. And I would show you my cat, but he's currently eating. So,
Shamile?
Hello, everybody. I'm not muted. No.
Yeah.
I am Shamile Sayed Mendez. I am an Argentine-American author. I was born and raised in Rosario, Argentina. I have lived in Utah pretty much most of my life. I'm the author of many books for young readers and adults. In my latest, The Beautiful Game, came out yesterday. Somebody asked me the question, so I counted today, and this is my 18th book. And if I count my anthologies, it's my 28th. So I had a really chill day yesterday, but I'm happy that I get to celebrate this with all of you. My books center on pretty much the same themes: family, home, where we are from, who we are, who our family is. My titles are representative. My picture book, my most popular picture book is Where Are You From? I also wrote Furia, which was the Pura del Pre Award winner in 2021. And every Witherspoon Book Club pick in 2020. And that's me.
Incredible and iconic of you. And Jess.
My name is Jessica Parra, and I am an attorney and daughter of Cuban and Guatemalan bakers, which means I never object to an extra slice of cake. I love writing about Latinas with big hair, chasing even bigger dreams and complicated families. My latest book is The Quince Project. And my debut novel, Ruby Ramos's Recipe for Success, just got an honorable mention in the International Latino Book Award. So that is super exciting. And I'm also a cat parent. I have 3 cats who are probably going to try to break down this door. They could open doors. So if you guys see me muting or see me pausing the video, it's because I'm kicking them out of this room right now.
Writers and cat night.
Oh, how cute. I'm melting. Super cute.
And again, I'm Johnny Garzavilla. I write young adult contemporary novels. My first one, 1500 Miles from the Sun. I also wrote Andre and Santi were here. My latest is Canto Contigo. We all are celebratory of growing up queer and Mexican in Texas. And coming of age and falling in love and being messy along the way, and taking up space. And they've been awarded a Stonewall Honor, a Buddha Belt Prize Honor, an International Latino Book Award. Love all of us here, and so happy to be with all 3 of you today to talk about being in publishing, I think specifically traditional publishing, and the sort of hurdles that maybe like we face, especially as Latina authors. First, I just wanted to talk about like a piece of advice that I give to writers who like ask me about like are writing a book right now or like seeking to become writers. and become publishers is like what like sort of advice that I would impart on them is that as best as they can to seek measures of success that are not related to capitalism for as long as they can. And whatever that means for them. Like maybe it's in every Instagram DM that a reader sends them that says, "Oh my God, I loved your book." Like that's the success. Or maybe it's realizing how much better we're getting at our craft. Like that's the success there. Are there any sort of successes that y'all like measure your own author lives with that you want to share with the crowd today? And we'll just keep on the same rotation.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've definitely needed those sort of pick-me-ups, I think, because publishing is so rough, and all my goalposts, like they're not moving goalposts. Like I'm moving goalposts, but not after I reach them. I'm more bringing them towards me. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll accept this. But every Instagram DM, every TikTok comment, like just when people reach out and tell me that they love the book, that they feel seen by it. I don't hear from a lot of teenagers, but I hear from a lot of sort of queer folks my age or older who are like, I wish I had this as a kid. And as much as I love that comment, it is a little sad. But but I think especially I think the logo is kind of covering Johnny's Palestinian flag.
Yes.
Like I have my keffiyeh, and my book has a Palestinian character. And something that's really, really, really meant a lot to me is when Palestinians reach out to me and say that they're grateful for the book. One time, I was at a book festival, and this woman, Echo wants to get in on this.
Love it.
Woman came up to me. And she for a moment, she couldn't speak, and she just reached out and she touched the keffiyeh, and she was like, I didn't think I would see one of these today. And then she was like, can I buy your book? And I was like, yeah, yeah. So I was running to a signing, but I took her to the bookstore first. And then she was just telling me along the way, how people used to tell her that Palestine didn't exist and therefore she didn't exist. And it's really powerful. I've also gotten an email from a Palestinian woman who's married to a Latina. So she's queer, she's Palestinian, and she has a Latina partner. So she was like, your book really meant a lot to me. And I was like, yeah, I think about those two people very often when I'm feeling dissatisfied or when I'm feeling sad about the sort of, in my head, lack of impact that the book has had. And it's been it gets me through.
I love it.
Yeah. Shamila?
Well, I also love the messages and the DMs. In my Instagram, I say no DMs, but of course, every once in a while I pick in, and I'm pleasantly surprised by what I find. Actually, yesterday I was doing something that we authors always tell the newbies not to do. I went to Goodreads. I started reading reviews of my Horse Country series. Horse Country is a series about a girl that loves horses. It came out. I started writing those books during the pandemic. I wrote 3 in 2021. That book really squeezed the life out of me. I was going through a very difficult time in my personal life, and they were very difficult. They're middle grade, but they're shorter. And I don't know if if you have experienced this, but I'm wordy. So in the 75,000 plus word count, I thrive, and the 40,000 word count for a middle grade that you have to have the whole story and then having those books be part of a series, it was very difficult, and I don't really know how I did it. And a part of me was also very dissatisfied because I kept thinking, what did I do? I knew that it was going to be difficult. I shouldn't have agreed on writing 3 in 1 year. And so I went and looked at the reviews on Goodreads. They're mostly from parents and teachers because middle graders don't go on Goodreads. And they were lovely, even the 3-star reviews. Because adults were like, my daughter loved it, but I'm an adult, so I'm gonna give it 3 stars. I'm like, okay, I'll take it. And it meant a lot to me because in the horse girl arena, you don't see a lot of Latina girls, and so it was very satisfying. And like Aaron was saying, in Furia, my character Camila shares a lot of my heritage, my cultural heritage. If you notice, my name and maiden name are Arabic. My grandfather was Syrian Lebanese of Palestinian parents, and I mentioned that my character Camila mentions that in the opening chapter. And just this week, I received a letter from the Arab Association in Argentina that had won an award in recognition from the Arab community in Argentina. And it was such a moment of, I don't know, I don't even know how to explain it, because I wanted to keep my maiden name, to keep this tie to this community in which I grew up. And that, being in the US, being an immigrant from Argentina, the Argentine, of course, I'm from Argentina, that is my number one label. But the other aspects of my identity go to a third or fourth place. But I was really happy that I could have this connection to this part of my community, because I know it's a representation that it's not often seen in literature, especially literature that comes from the US. And about Latinx, we always see, certain specific forms of representation, but we don't always see these multicultural dark-skinned Argentines in the mainstream media. And so just seeing that my books are well received and that they mean something to people, that has meant everything for me.
I love all of that. For me, yeah, I think it's always connecting to readers. This summer, like one of the coolest things that happened to me, I was at one of my local barns, and there were these teen girls at they had like a book, like the end table with a bunch of books. And one of them was like, "Oh my God, are you Jessica?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh." So her older sister had like brought her younger sister and the younger sister's best friend to the bookshop to like buy Quince, because like she had like loved it so much. And so, yeah, that was like really cool. And so she was there, the older sister. And so it's like, she's like, "Yeah, could we take pictures?" And she was just telling me about like how much she loved like the characters. And we didn't share the same like ethnicity or anything, but like she talked to me about some of the universalities in Quince, that she related to. And so that was touching. It's like, I think I'm proud of like not only always like centering BIPOC characters, like for Ruby, there was like, like obviously like the main character, she's like an Afro-Latina. And in Quince, I was like, everyone's going to be brown. Like everyone's going to be BIPOC in it. And so, yeah, but it's like, there's like a lot of universal themes in all of our works. And I think that like connecting on that's like on the specific intersectionalities that we write about, but then also about the universals, that's always like really touching to me. So it's like always the readers.
Love that. Yeah, I feel like so relatable to like Erin. I feel like with like a lot of queer representation in books are really like sought out by older readers. I remember one time I was at a bar and this guy came up to me and was like, "You're the person who wrote like 1500 Miles from the Sun. I follow you on Instagram." And I was like, "You're wild," because this guy is like 50s, like we're in a bar and it's like, "Oh, this is wild, but cool." But like conversely, like to have an actual like young person come up to you is just like, "Yes, like tell me what you love about my book, like please, like, this is so cool." I remember I was in Dallas and I had this like mom who brought her queer child to my book event, and like I was gonna talk to them for like 10 minutes, and I was like, this is like, you are who I'm writing for. Like they were so nervous, but I was like, please don't be. Like, I'm so excited that you're here. Like you are why I'm here right now. So like, yeah, like whenever we get to meet like our actual intended audience, especially, like our Latina intended audience and those young people that we really think about whenever we write our stories, like that just means something that's so incomparable, I feel. But I think though, like related, like while these are all sort of really exemplary ideals to have and like really great to hold on to, the reality is that we do all live under capitalism, and as traditionally published authors, we work and exist within that reality. So I think like a lot of people here would be curious about how your life has changed at all as you've transitioned from storyteller to a storyteller who also is a published author who needs to pay for groceries. And we can just like go, we can keep on the cycle.
The cycle. I mean, so I'm very lucky. I'm not someone who has ever written on deadline. I say lucky, but it's like no one will buy another book from me, but that's fine. Like my like my day job, like I said, is like I teach creative writing at UT, and so like I've been able to write exactly what I want when I want, and so that's all been fine. I think that the aspect of the sort of the way that capitalism sort of sucks me of my joy is the feeling that I have to like market, which should not be my job. But you know, I think people most often, like if they do recognize me, they're like, you're that guy from TikTok, you wrote a book. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm like pretty obnoxious on TikTok and I'm on there all the time because it's like the medium where like I can actually reach people. And so it's like nice on one hand, but it's also like I feel this constant pressure to be like, okay, there's a new TikTok trend. How do I like think about it in terms of like my book, right? And so that is not fun. Like I wish I could just sort of, yeah, like go about my day and not think about that, but I do.
I kept clicking in the wrong microphone. For me, how my life has changed. My life changed dramatically when I became a published author. Although I keep the same routines than when I wasn't published, because I always wrote when my kids were in school. And I kept, like I'm very demanding on myself, even when I didn't have set deadlines for an editor or an editor. I had my own goals, and it was like a competition with myself. And then when you have a contract and you have to submit things on time, I am an oldest daughter, and I am very demanding on myself. So I will never miss a deadline, or I always said I will never miss no matter what. The thing is that my first book was published in 2018. In 2019 and 2020, my agent and I sold a bunch of books, which was super fun to announce and to be paid the first half of those advances, let me tell you. But then I had to write 8 books, so it was a lot. And then the pandemic happened. I have 5 children. 4 of them were teenagers at the time, and then my little one. My 2 oldest children were really struggling during the pandemic because it was freshman year in college for my son, senior year in high school for my daughter. And it was terrible, if you remember what March 2020 was like. And then right after, I lost my dad was sick with brain cancer pretty much all of 2021, passed away on my birthday at the end of 2022. And then my mother-in-law passed away. It was so much, and I had deadlines, and it was so much pressure that I got sick, and I'm still trying to catch up and pay, pay back for not taking care of myself. I thought I was strong. I thought that I could do it all, but everybody has a limit, and I got to the point that I could make myself right, and then I just couldn't do it anymore. And so I had to postpone deadlines, and that really affected my relationship with one specific publisher. Some of my editors also left their publishers during these times. My editor at Scholastic, we've written 8 books together. Suddenly, I'm orphaned, and it happened 4 more times with 4 other editors. In fact, 2 of my editors are quitting by the end of this week. One of them was laid off, actually, and the other one's leaving the industry. So it was a lot. And then it was a very rude awakening to realize that the art and the business of writing are completely different things. That even if, people try to be patient and understanding, it is a business. They have their own bosses, and there's so much space they can give you if you want to continue publishing. And I do. I want to be writing and publishing forever. So I had to make some difficult choices. Sometimes, writing, finishing revisions in 1 week's time, because that's all the time that I had for a book. And so I feel like if we lived in a society that wasn't so centered by, on capitalism, that we gave the arts room to grow and thrive, my books would be so much better. And I do put all of me in my books, but I have suffered and my family has suffered too. But I don't want to quit. So, yeah.
Okay, your answers, so far everyone has been on point, and I feel we could just even have an entire conversation on just this question, right? For me, and it's like I'll try to talk about something a little bit different because it's like I have so many similarities with both of y'all's answers. Like, yeah, I lost family members also. Horrific. Well, we need to DM each other after.
Yes.
But so I'll touch on something else. It's like, you know how like back in the day people used to say, oh, like a patron of the arts, right? So I feel like for people, since there's probably people in here watching that are interested in going into this, I think it's important to know that depending on where you live, that sometimes the patron of the arts is not going to be your publisher. You're going to have to, keep your day job. I know that there had been some discourse online like over the last couple of days, and it was just really interesting to me to see the type of people saying it's okay to quit their day job, and it wasn't surprising to me, like who was saying, yeah, quit your day job and become a full-time writer. Like the reality is that like for a lot of people, that is not a possibility. And a lot of writers, and they're not so transparent or it's just not obvious. It's like they have full-time jobs or spouses or like family support that make it possible. Because I live in Los Angeles, things are really expensive here. If I were to just do I would not be able to make a living just off of my writing. And I am really lucky that, I'm an attorney. I have a very supportive family. So if I did want to continue pursuing this, I have that. And then the money and the publishing money, I call manicure money. And I have a friend who's like, how expensive are your manicures? And I'm like, expensive. So that, I'm joking, but you guys know what I mean. And then another thing that was like interesting to me that I'll touch on quickly is like, being in this industry now for a couple of years, I've had a front seat to see how, BIPOC stories are valued in the industry, and they're often valued much less than non-BIPOC stories. So that has been a little disheartening. And I don't mean that just in terms of advances, but in the support that books get, post making the deal. And so many of the things that help a book, reach a certain level of visibility, even, I'm not even talking about success, all of those things like reviews, like Indie Next, all these things that I thought, oh, these people just pick books because they're good. It's like, no, your publisher pays money for that. And I was really, really shocked. So it's, so I won't get into it too much because I think that that's really like a 200 level course, not a 101 level course. So I was just really surprised at the value that, our stories get paid or don't get paid compared to other people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I like as an author, like I'm fully a child of a pandemic. Like I remember my last time like at a coffee shop before the world shut down was my agent and I talking about how we got an offer for 1,500 Miles from the Sun, like before I went into work. And like the pandemic started and all of a sudden I was, I went from working 2 jobs to working no jobs and being lucky enough to be able to like survive in a pretty affordable city like San Antonio, Texas, with the not enormous amount of like advance that I got. But I've since been able to sort of like keep myself as just a full-time author. But like I think you pointed out, Jessica, is that like it does take like a lot of assessment of what can I do without and what can I just kind of like give up and what do I not need to sort of think about in order to be able to just wake up and be able to go on Microsoft Word and that's what I can do with my day. By no means has it been easy financially, and I'm very lucky that like I am like golden girlsing with like my friends as roommates, and like that keeps like rent down, all of these things that sort of just like buffer my ability to be able to do what I love. But like even aside from like the personal, I feel like I remember Andre and Santi were here just being the last time I've been able to just write a book without any sort of agent or editor expectation of deadlines or anything. And I spent a solid 6 months with that first draft and like 3 more months before my agent ever saw it. And now it's like, okay, how can I put together a proposal? How can I write a synopsis in 50 pages and send it to an editor and hopefully get some human money off of this? It like the way in which I really thought about myself as a storyteller coming into this, and then now as a professional author, has really kind of changed the way I can prioritize writing, and not only just writing for young people, but it's like, okay, well, I need extra money. So which other age category can I get into? Like I'll start writing adult too to kind of buffer that, and I'll just sort of double the amount that I'm outputting in order to make things work. And I think too, like just the way in which you have to consider what's sellable too, even like even just considering like going into adult, like my agent and I have discussed like ideas that I have, but like which one is the most sellable, which one is going to get me into the door the best, and which one can they help me get the most amount of money for, and that way then now I can sell whatever book I want to, but we just have to get our foot in the door first with a good idea that's promotable. And so yeah, like seeing the ways in which like capitalism and trends and vibes and aesthetics sort of rule publishing. And like, you know, we really love to promote like write the book of your heart and write what makes you happy, and like really firmly trying to hold on to that belief. But a lot of times it is like, what are you going to write that's lucky enough to get you a paycheck? And I think the longer that I continue to be in this profession, the more that seems just so unignorable to me. But yeah, and just like all of, you know, yeah, this is so real, and I'm so happy we get to have this discussion. I think also like going into just publishing in the world of publishing and working as a traditional published author, one part of like being that I hadn't prepared myself for was also being an educator. And by this I don't mean like teaching teenagers and young people, but like I'm also not qualified to do that. I like in this sort of thought, I'm thinking about like the time that we spend educating other professionals that we work with, whether they are our agents or editors, art directors, all the sort of people that put a book together. That we sort of have to like educate on our own experiences and the experiences of our diversity and our disinclusion and things like that. And so do any of y'all have any sort of stories you want to share about like the experience of having to explain those sort of cultural details or livelihoods or even reasoning for existences that just go over the heads of a predominantly paper colored people in publishing? Yeah.
Before I answer that, I want to say hi to Anna from Austin. I want to say thank you to Mediha. I'm going through the comments right now. And I want to say thank you to Bethany, because you, those last two, you're very, very sweet words. Thank you. I hope so too. I hope to be, stressed and on deadline at some point. But yeah, so in terms of educating, like I do literally do that with the youngins, with these undergrads at UT. But yeah, no, in publishing, it's interesting. I remember there are some comments that really, I repeat them because I still don't completely understand the perspective that generated them. So one was, I wrote This Is Why They Hate Us, and then we got a read from my agent, obviously, and then my agent's assistant, and then a floater assistant at the agency. And it was that last person who was fresh out of Dartmouth, was probably, like you said, paper colored, and went through the manuscript and was like, why do they speak English at home? And I was like, I don't know, you can't even call it a stat, because I just deleted the comment, and I was like, I'm going to pretend I didn't see that, but of course it stuck with me. But like in my head, I'm like, oh, they really like see Latinas as a monolith, right? Like they really see us in like one way. And like my answer to that was literally just like, because my family exists. Like,
yes.
Like, it's like, it's not more than that. And then one time in grad school, I wrote this story about a friend of mine, and she's undocumented. Well, she used to be undocumented. Now she isn't, thank God. But so, I wrote the story based on her and her boyfriend. And, the dog in their story, I made the character name him Logan. And it was because my friend in real life was a fan of Wolverine, and, his name is Logan. And then there was this, again, white girl in my class who, when I got her comments back, she was like, the dog should have a Mexican name. And I was like, why? And like, also, like, please tell me like what a Mexican dog is named. Like, obviously we have, names that we used and stuff. But it's like, please tell me what you think that is. Like, should his name be Taco? You know, so there are just these moments where like, you know, I always consider like, okay, do I sit down and like have the conversation, or do I just protect my peace? And in these two instances, I was like, I'm just going to ignore it and go about my day. But it's been like, okay, you know, it's like a reminder of why I really am pushing for this so hard, right? So that hopefully in the future, other authors don't get like weird little comments like that.
Mm-hmm. I had a really good experience once with my scholastic author, and that's why I was so sad to lose her, because I wrote a book that's called Wish Upon a Stray. And it's about a family that moves from Argentina to the US because of the mom's job as a professor. And the little girl has to, and it's for the wish line. So, of course, there's an animal. It's cute. It's, you know, sweet. And the little girl is sad because she's leaving her cat behind and the grandma. The little girl had been born in the US and she'd been learning English. So when she moves to the US with her family, she's super frustrated because she's so smart at school, but in the US, nothing makes sense. In her school in Argentina, they don't have the technology that the US use here in the US. So she was behind. Her little brothers are speaking way better English than her, even though she was the one born in the US. And so, but I wanted to show the experience of my nieces and nephews. That's what they went through. My godson was born in the US and he doesn't speak English. And, you know, like there's a whole lot of, he was undocumented in Argentina for a long time. Finally, he got his Argentine documents. But that's part of my family, like you said, Erin. And my editor, her dad's from Argentina. She was born and raised in the US, and she is white, like a lot of Argentines, but she knows the culture. And so we had a beautiful working relationship until we got the copy edits. And the copy editor was so aggressive and rude that my editor said, I'm so sorry. I try to filter through the comments so that you didn't have to see them, but I'm kind of shocked. What should we do? Should I say something about it? And I, you know, again, trying to be the good girl, I don't want to ruffle any feathers. I'm like, I don't want to ruin my relationship with my publisher. But I was thinking, I was lucky enough to have my editor support me and protect me from this aggression. But what if this copy editor gets another writer who doesn't have this kind of support and they have to suffer this? So I said, we should report her. And I don't know if this person's working as a copy editor anymore, but that was a very, and I mean, copy edits are nerve-wracking already when you have to defend your choices, but that was a blatant example. And it was difficult because once again, it's defending your identity and your culture and why a family does things a certain way. And but yeah, that's the one example that is clear in my mind.
Oh my God, this question. So yeah, like in workshops, I got one of the things that like I got a lot. So in my debut novel, Ruby Ramos' Recipe for Success, it's about a teen baker. And one of the most egregious comments I ever got was in like the first chapter when Ruby's like opening like the oven. There was like a lady who straight up told me, she's like, "Oh, so she's not baking meth?" So I was just like, wow. Okay, so I've gotten so many of these like outlandish comments, and I thought that it would stop at that level of like, you know, people trying to figure out how to be writers. But I was really surprised too when I was like querying agents, and I was very specific too about like I really try to target like BIPOC agent, and my agent now, she is a woman of color. I love her, but when we were like submitting to editors, some of the editors like said that they would their editorial vision was and some of agents said this too, that they wanted, it would be better, the stakes would be higher if the main character's family's bakery was like on the verge of being taken by the bank, and so she had to enter the competition to like win money to save like the bakery. And I'm just like, would like a non-brown person be given this advice of like, why is it always like that they have to save, like that the business is always like about to be taken by the bank? You know, it was like one of those things that was like so annoying to me that I kept on seeing. And I would always wonder, like, are white counterparts getting this feedback? So that was just like, there's been just so many. Again, I could think, like, we could be here like all night, like thinking about everything. But I think one of the things that I would always go back to is like, well, I'm an attorney, so it's like I love conflict. I'm not afraid of confrontation. So it's like every time something has happened, I would clap back. But it did get to a point where there was consequences for me clapping back. There was like a cover situation where I'm like, oh my God, like, am I getting the covers for Quince that like Johnny rejected? Like, because there were just some that were just like mariachi covers. And I'm like, there's no mariachis in my book. And even one time I'm like, you do know that I'm not Mexican, right? Like a lot of these things. And there was consequences when I would clap back. Like I've had people from my team like unfollow me. So I was like, okay, yeah, like we're in high school all over again, but it got to a point sort of touching to like what Aaron said of like, where I would think, and like, yeah, what was already brought up was like how much of me pushing back, like, I don't even care about how it's going to affect me. I'm going to be fine, like, no matter what. But like, is this going to then affect someone else trying to come through the door behind me? And that was like unfair that I even had to think that of like, am I hurting somebody else by advocating for myself and like educating these people? So that was like something that was like really frustrating to me, because like when it got to the point of like for Keynes's copy edits, it wasn't even like culturally specific at that point. Like I just feel like there was like such a high turnaround rate with like editors and in publishing, because it's like, yeah, so the people are leaving all the time. And so it's like that quote from like Dazed and Confused, like I'm like staying the same, but everyone gets younger and younger, or whatever, like Matthew McConaughey like said in that. So it's like, I don't even think it's like educating on like culturally specific things, which we have to do all the time. But even on other marginalizations, like for Quince, I have a deaf character, and that they would change things, like, and I'm like, no, that's like not what I like, how it's supposed to be presented. And not only that, like it's like it deals with grief, the Quince project, and it was just like educating on like life experiences, like the things that I was told in copy edits were so egregious that at that point it's like I clap back a couple times, but I'm like, I'm just screenshotting this for future reference. And it was just like, I was just like over it at that point, where I'm like, I just have to let this go.
Yeah, I feel that heavily. And for my first book, we had a developmental editor brought in to help with like my actual editor, and I won't go into like all the outrageous things that he said, but one that like I do sort of like always think about is that he had commented on my manuscript asking the question of if actual teenagers in South Texas still listen to Selena, and like was just so like oblivious. And it really highlighted the fact that like they brought him in because he was like this gay man and was like, oh yeah, like, love, solidarity. But it was like, he's a gay man who is a boomer and has probably lived his entire life in New York City and never spent time in South Texas. And like, I like Aaron just fully just ignored it. Like, I'm not going to even, no, it's fine. Like, my reality, I'm just gonna stick with it, and like he can question whether or not that actually exists. And I just constantly think about that of like hello, like I would know, like I think I would know living here. And like he's constantly on my mind whenever I just think of outlandish people sometimes. But even more recently, like I think of like my Canto Contigo cover, which I love, I'm a huge fan of. And I like the first sort of sketches that we got were like these two characters, these two boys, in sort of just regular clothes, and it was like they could just kind of be, the story could be about anything. Like they just look like Gen Zers who like to thrift, and so like I'm not really sure what's happening here. And like from the beginning, we were like, I don't know what I want with this cover, but I want them in mariachi charros and like the outfits, and like got the sort of fact from them that like they didn't want any sort of music on the cover, because I also said if there could be like a guitarron and like a vihuela for their instruments, that'd be cute too. But they were like, no, like music on the cover makes the book flop. And So we can't do that. And I was like, okay, well, no instruments, that's fine, but I want them in their mariachi outfits. Like that's got to be the bar. Got back like, hey, we're thinking, what if we like put them in like Gallaveras? And like, bless my editor, I pray for her daily. Even if I'm no longer at the imprint, she was like, I get that they do not at all wear Gallaveras in the entire book. This is just what I was asked to tell you. And I was like, thank you. So you'll know that like whenever I say no, like you'll understand why. And it just kept on being a back and forth of like them really not wanting to put them in mariachi outfits because again and again, like music makes books tank. And it was like, well, you spent the money on a music book. Like I Sing is in Spanish on the cover already. And mariachi is in the book description in the first sentence. Like, I don't know if you're thinking you're going to fool teenagers, but like you're not. In a way that just felt more and more like grossish, the way they just kept pushing back. And with like this sort of data from somewhere about like books with music on the cover not doing well, and like also bless my agent who is incredible being like, okay, well, like the white marching band books flop, but where's the data on the queer brown Mexican stories? Those don't exist. That data is not there, so you're not going to put and impart that data on this book because they're different. And having to just be like, yeah, it's not a marching band outfit. Like these are not the same thing. This is historical and cultural too. And having to do that back and forth really just was like, no, like I'm gonna keep doing it until they show up in mariachi outfits, but this is getting wild. And yeah, like just that whole experience was just like, okay, like this is turmoil, and one day I'm gonna pray for all of you, but we'll see what happens. And so yeah, like but to be in community with all of you and be like, yeah, this isn't just a one sort of thing is both comforting and also the most uncomfortable thing that we have to sit through, I think. And yeah, as we continue our discussion, I do also want to just shout out to everyone watching. If y'all have any questions, be sure to drop them down. I'll ask us one more and then save sort of the like elephant in the room question for last, and we'll get to Q&A in a second. So if you have anything you want to ask us, go ahead and drop those in the comments. But before that, I do want to acknowledge that like all of us here in this panel are like included as historically underrepresented peoples in publishing, and not just as Latinas, even though like that data in itself is really terrible. But we're also immigrants and queer and have Native ancestors and identities that make us one of a very few, and our stories oftentimes one of a very minimal few. And that writing can already be such a solitary career. How do you not get yourself lost in that solitude? That realization that like when looking at who we are specifically, we aren't shelves of books yet. We're just kind of handfuls of stories still. How do you sort of stay above that and continue a positivity that at least helps you dive into writing and continuing to tell stories?
I mean, you touched on it, right? It's like the four of us are here sharing our experiences, like getting to know each other. I already know too much about you, Johnny, but like, it's been nice getting to know Jessica and Shamila. But yeah, no, it's really just, it's readers and stuff too, but I think there's a special connection that we writers have, and especially those who share marginalization. So like, if you look at my book, like the people who blurbed it, like are people that I was like, hey, this is my first book. Like, I'm scared. I don't know what to do. Can you just like tell me it's good, or let me put that on the book? And so it's like they're all queer men and ethnic minorities, right? So it's like Adam Silvera, Aidan Thomas, Adib Khurram, Ryan Douglas, Abdi Nazemian, like these people whose work that I admire, and then they turn around and they sort of try like help me out. And then Johnny, like you were just in Austin, and we did your event, and I moderated, and I forced you to drink Fireball. And like that was lovely, and we have our group chat with Aiden and Sonora, and like it's just like in an interesting way I think about white writers, and I'm like, do they have that? Like, do they have? I'm sure they have group chats and stuff, but I'm like I feel like it isn't as necessary, and it isn't as like nurturing. Like I actually think like we're really lucky that we do watch out for each other and we celebrate each other, and yeah, I think that's been able to keep me going. I love like a good book event. Like, thank God, like, I miss New York so much, but like living here in Austin is like we do have like a surprising amount of literary stuff going on all the time, and I'm just like, when's the next one? I'm like, I'm always trying to like go to these things and meet people in person, and I just they're both white, but like two of my friends here are writers. Uh, two dudes, and they're adopting a baby, and like I was just at their baby shower, and like all these other writers were there, and it's just like, yeah, I love all the community that we sort of have to build, but like it you get your benefits from it.
Yes, it's exactly what Aaron said. It's being in community. I am an introvert, but I'm a social introvert. I need my quiet time and I love writing by myself, but I love talking with people and meeting them in person. I live in Utah, which, like it has this stereotype as being super homogeneous, but it's actually super diverse. I've lived here for 27 years already, and it is my home. And I got to the point, like my husband's from Puerto Rico, and so we are like very unique in that sense. Perhaps one of the 5 Latina families in our town, but there is way more Latinos in the Salt Lake area. And so we have it takes work to build the community. And we have a pretty robust community of friends who are not writers. And so it's nice to disconnect sometimes from the industry and talk about real life things and go to events with them or go to yoga or go to a concert. But I also love hanging out with my writer friends because they know what it's like. And I need the mentoring, I need the advice. We have a very strong and giant writing community in Utah. A lot of everybody's favorite authors live here. But I'm one of 3 Latinas, Kayla Rivera and Megan Jensen. I think there's one more actually that I just met, Melissa. But for a long time, I was the only one. And it was, so extreme that 10 years ago, way before I was even published, a school asked me to come and talk to them about Hispanic and Latina Heritage Month. And I told them, I'm not even published. And they're like, we don't care. The kids just need to see a Latina person because we have such a big immigrant and refugee community. And these children have never seen a person like them. And I love going to the schools in my community. And when the kids hear my accent, they get excited. They're like, you sound just like my mom. Or when I say my name, we have a huge Arab community here. They're like, oh, that's my sister's name, She only spells it with a J. And so to have that connection and to see that light in their eyes, it really brings me so much joy. So seeing people face to face and having these interactions really fills me with happiness. I met a lot of my author friends online before I knew these other writers that I mentioned. Aida Salazar and I met through Facebook, and when our books were coming out, we didn't have a debut group. We were both rejected because we were coming out in December and she was coming out in January. So with some other authors like Mia and Jen Cervantes and Claribel, we were like, okay, let's form our own little group. And that's how Las Musas was born. And now look at Las Musas, how it became this huge thing, and this festival was created after, and there's a mentoring program, and I feel like community has meant everything for me, and that has been the one aspect that keeps me going. I can't quit. For a long time I said I can't quit because I'm the only Latina in Utah. Who are the kids gonna have? And then I'm like, okay, I just can't give the powers that be the satisfaction. I keep going.
That's so true. And I mean, talking about Las Musas, it's like I got into the mentorship program with Las Musas, and you guys mentioned Sonora, and so we were in the first class of mentees. And so our publishing journeys probably wouldn't have happened as quickly as they did without that. So community absolutely matters. And then when you guys were talking about the group chat, it's like, I also, and like, if it's like other ones are as nurturing, I also wonder, like, are other ones as helpful? Because it's like publishing is very opaque. And even, you know, once you reach, like on book 2, I was like, oh, I know more. It's like, no, I still knew nothing. And there was still so much to learn, but it's like, I could ask my friends who are a little bit ahead of me in that journey or on the same page, like, compare stories, you know, and that's like, I think really, really important to be able to like advocate for yourself and protect yourself, and also get the support to keep going.
Yeah, what all of you have said has been very much, I'm just gonna like second all of that. You know, I often think about just how, like, you know, as a Mexican American, like, we're like 10% of the population, but like, is that representative of the number of YA books that we get put out a year? Is that in Texas, we're like 30% of the population, and then is that representative of the population? Like, as like a queer Mexican storyteller, I can only think of like 2 authors who have written queer Mexican centered stories this year that have like books out this year, and like, that's not at all what we should be, where we should be at. And you know, that's not to say at all like other people shouldn't get these things, but that like we should be uplifting, and publishing should be making space for people like us, and to get our stories out, to be more diverse and to be more reflective of the actual diversity of this country. But like, community is definitely what helps, and knowing that, like, even if I can only think of maybe like 5 queer Mexican authors writing queer contemporary stories that center us, like, I can go to any of us, and like, we're like really friendly and we're really supportive of each other. And Las Musas too, like just being in Las Musas. And I remember being a debut author and starting the Las Musas podcast with my fellow debut Musas, and spending like the half hour after recording an episode just talking and reflecting on our experiences that we're having, and getting to just like voice frustrations and all of these things. And that really helped, especially in 2021 when we couldn't even go outside, like, celebrate our books with people. We got to celebrate with each other. So yeah, so community has just been really what's helped me as an author even continue getting up and doing this again in the morning. And yeah, and just everything that y'all have said has been so on point and relevant. I think at this point, if there are any cute questions, we can highlight some of those. Okay. Oh, thank you for reading Andre and Santi. We're here. Was marriage an option? Well, just yes or no. I'll just do yes or no. No, it wasn't. In my like head canon, like, obviously, yeah, they're there for life, and so for sure one day. But that was never a thing that I thought about for the story. Thank you though for your question. Do we have any other cute questions? Here we go. Oh, Aaron. Was Salim's nationality set from the start, and same with Fabiola? And how did you do your research?
So before, well, I wrote This Is Why They Hate Us really quickly. I wrote it in a month, and like, I didn't outline, I didn't do anything. So Salim actually wasn't in the first chapter, but I knew that the main character had a best friend who he was in love with, and I was like, I knew that he was a cinnamon roll, like he was or seemed to be, that he was just like this very, very sweet boy. And then when I was thinking about like his ethnicity, because I already had them for the prospects, like I knew Ziggy was Black, I knew Tyler was white, I knew Manny was also Mexican. And I was also, to answer the other question, like I knew Fabiola was Afro-Latina because I based her on my close friend at the time. And so like those were all figured out. But with Salim, I was like, I don't know. And then like I saw this actor who was very handsome, and I was like, oh, like a 17-year-old version of him like would be crush worthy for Kike. And so it sort of just happened randomly, but I had this idea of who he was before the ethnicity, and then they kind of grew together. And then doing that research again with Fabiola, didn't really have to research. I mean, of course, I had already read like so many Afro-Latina like books and stuff, and my friend was, and so like I felt comfortable with that. But with Salim, I think people forget that research isn't just like nonfiction, right? So like I read articles, of course, so much about Palestinian history, but just like, you know, current events with Palestinians. But, you know, it's fiction. So there's an author named Susan Abulhawa who writes incredible books. Mornings and Janine is one of hers. And then, so yeah, I was reading fiction. Then I was also reading poetry, which was incredible. Remy Kanazi. Kanazi is Salim's last name, and I took it from this poet because I read his collection. And then there's one more interesting thing that I'll say before I stop talking. There's a collection called Birthright by George Abraham, and I read the book. I wrote the book, and then I read his their collection, and there was something about a globe and how like Palestine wasn't on the globe, and like I had that in my book already. So I was sort of like, oh, like I think I'm on the right path. Like I wrote this thing, and then it appeared in this collection, and then who was my sensitivity reader? George Abraham. And so it was like this little like cute serendipity thing that I really loved. And again, yeah, it was also following people on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and sort of being like, what are Palestinian Americans like? What's their day-to-day life and everything. And so I tried to draw from as many sources as possible. And it wasn't just, like history books and, articles.
We have a couple more, I think. Perfect. What is the most valuable thing you learned from being a traditionally published author? We can start with whoever wants to start with these, I think.
Okay, I'll go. For me, it's the fact that our stories have a lot of power. Sometimes we believe they don't.
Mm-hmm.
I've had moments during difficult times in the world that I felt like, okay, what am I doing? I'm writing my little stories and the world's falling apart. But hello, stories are everything, are what keeps us going as humans, what makes us wake up in the morning so we can go out in the world and then come back and tell our stories to somebody, even if it's just at the dinner table to our family. And I get to write them. And there's so much power in that. And it's the power to change people's minds and perceptions and open new worlds of ideas. And we get to write for young children and young people. And I think that's incredible that we get to do that.
Okay, I'll go. Yeah, just going off of that, I just think it's been wonderful in like the 2 years that I've been in publishing, just to see how much more there is. There's still not enough. I still want more, but just from when I first started making that shift of like writing to writing for publication, how there are starting to be books with intersectionality, more of them. And so that's been really wonderful to see.
I think just figuring out like what are hard limits and what isn't, like just like knowing like what I will like, what hills I will die on and which ones I won't.
I think for me, like something that I guess I wasn't really aware of when I was just vibing and trying to write a book for the first time is the way in which like I won't have a decision about my identity and my character's identities being political. At first I just wanted to write a story about a boy with like a long distance boyfriend, and like that was kind of it. But like then like book bans were such a topic of 2021, and like where my book lands in that sort of perspective and the stories I want to tell, where they land. And I think that like the stories that I continue to tell have like been a sort of question of like, okay, I know this about like what's happening, what's going on, and how people are going to perceive my book, but like what's next? And so what's really helped me is that now I can write and be petty about that and like feel really good about it. I mean, Under and Santi Were Here is truly an answer to American Dirt being published, and not only that, but other fellow Mexican American authors crediting it and giving it validity, and being able to say like, no, how about not? And and even in our own community, and Canto Contigo being reflective on mariachi's machismo and traditional culture, and reflecting on like queer spaces and like where we can be and where we should be. And so yeah, like just kind of like, yeah, if you want to make me into an advocate for something, then sure, I'll gladly take it and run with that. Was what I learned. And let's see, next question. If you had a magic wand, what do you want to see more of in publishing? My quick answer is I would love to see more graphic novels by Latinas, especially in the YA realm. Teenagers want more graphic novels, and I would love to see more of them.
I think in general, I just want to see more risk taking. So like, Johnny, you talked about your cover and, they didn't want to put music on it because music books don't sell. And I remember when I was talking about my cover, I was like, I don't like realistic depictions of characters. I was like, I love me a silhouette. Like I love, I just don't want you to like show the characters. And then they were like, faces sell in YA. And like they always have like their prepackaged like data stuff that's like, this is what happens. And I just in general, yeah, like more risk taking. And I know like why that doesn't happen, because they're like, well, we need to make money, and so we're doing this thing that's worked in the past. But that, yeah, I just in all senses too, like more genre bending, more, again, risks on things that they don't think are going to be like huge sellers, but like will mean something to someone. Like I'll be completely like transparent about this. Like I'm on sub with an adult book, and the rejections are so nice. The passes are so nice. And a lot of the things that keep coming up is just, they're like, we just don't see this hitting the list, right? They're like, we can't guarantee right now that like we don't see this selling this many copies. And it's like, okay, like, but what if you did it anyway? And then we kind of just saw, right? Like, so, realizing, I guess, that writing is an art. It's not a science, and it is a business, but again, magic wand. So more risk taking in every regard, really.
Yes, something that I would love for the industry to do more is just to let us write whatever we want, and not, label us. In a conversation with one of my editors, we were discussing a second book in a contract, and she said, I think I would like an immigration story. And I'm like, I already wrote an immigration story, and I want to write this. And my idea, Aaron, was not, that shiny, super high concept thing that would hit the list probably, but well, maybe it could if they invested in it, if they did marketing, and if they pushed it, because the idea that I had was very comparable to other books in the YA market right now. And so, that was eye-opening. What kind of books were allowed to tell? It made me sad. So if I had a magic wand, I would, take those ideas away from editors' minds.
I think for me, because like I'm not gonna. I agree with everyone, and I would wish for that too. But so I'll do something different, and I just wish that like editorial and like publishing in general could be more remote, so we get a different type of people in the industry. Because it's like, if it's going to be New York centered, then there's only a specific type of person that could even apply to be in those jobs, let alone have a career in those jobs. Because not anyone could, work for or do internships for years without getting paid, or a very like low salary in New York City. So I think, because there's so many people that I know that would love to be editors, or would love to be in marketing, or would love to be in whatever types of like areas in publishing, that can't be a possibility because they can't afford to move to New York. So it would be just like really wonderful to see like the type of those risks being taken with like not only like marketing strategies, but like the types of books that are being like acquired, if it wasn't just all a very small group of people in New York.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think like to that point too, like I feel like the data that I've seen is that Latinas in like the professional aspect of publishing, like that percentage has dropped as like reflective of the whole. And so like ways in which it's easier to be an editor or in publishing and marketing as a Latina, like fully let's magic wand the heck out of that for sure. Let's see. Next question. Oh, we have some good ones. Oh my gosh. What one piece of advice would you give to pre-published authors? Anyone who feels they want to impart some words of wisdom?
I'll be shady for a minute. Marry rich.
Love that. Agree with that. I would just say remind yourself that it's not a meritocracy, and that it's just you can't control anything, which might not be comforting, but it is. Yeah, it's that advice of like. Also, too, I think like don't make writing your whole life and be the epitome of your self-worth. Like again, because like it's just not fair. It's not a fair industry, and it's so there aren't degrees of subjectiveness, but like it's very subjective, and it's just it's hard out there, and so just know that it'll happen if it happens, and then if not, you'll live, right? You can still live, laugh, love without publishing, but it probably will happen if you keep at it.
Yes, thanks for adding that last part, Aaron, because that's what I was gonna say. It can happen if you want it, if you keep at it. I know so many people who have been writing for so long, and I'm always super excited when they announce that they're gonna be published. And there's so many other opportunities now. I feel like sometimes people look, or maybe not so much anymore, but people who self-publish, I mean, they have all my admiration because I don't possess the skill set, I haven't really applied myself to learn, that skill set that requires self-publishing. But a lot of people are doing it and they're loving it, because at the end of the day, what we want the most is to share our stories with the world, to have readers, and to be able to share our stories. So sometimes the thing that we want can take different shapes and forms, and so be open to those things. And again, be true to yourself and try to write in somebody else's voice and have fun, because otherwise, if you forget why you do it and you're not having fun, then you're gonna lose steam. So keep doing the things that keep that magic alive, because they'll help you persevere.
Yeah, and I would say embrace all the things that aren't writing that count as writing. Reading books that are in the genre that you write, in the age category you write, count as writing. Like other forms of media that you consume can fully count as writing. Sometimes, like just making a Spotify playlist or a Pinterest board fully counts as writing. Things that like help you see the story that you're trying to tell and make you excited to tell that story. Like those are all great, and those, as long as they're keeping you inspired and on track, like that's writing, and that's what I would tell you. Let's see, next question. Oh, incredible. Out, Julia, love. Okay, what are your experiences with marketing disparity? I only have a shady response to this, so if anyone else has any sort of reflective answer, then I'll let y'all go first. Okay, well, and I maybe like someone, maybe one of us other ones can like sort of know what this is, but I when it came to my next book, a book that'll be coming out next year, I had sent it to my previous publisher. We're just gonna talk now. So yeah, so I sent it to my previous publisher, what seeing if they were into it. And a few months later, I got back a as much as we would love to continue working with Johnny, we want to see how well Canto Contigo does first before we commit to any sort of amount of money. And this was like in early August when Canto Contigo came out in April the following year. And so as someone who's trying to live off of the money I make off of writing, that was can't do that. No, absolutely not. And like, especially because a lot of the way in which the success comes from that book would have been how well they market that book as a publisher, not necessarily anything that I could do. And it ended up being, I'm happy that I said no to that, because a couple months later there was a boycott on my publisher, and so no one was talking about my book in general anyways. And so the way in which they would allow my book to flop anyways really just showed their commitment to, or I guess they're not at all commitment to telling queer brown stories. And I was very upfront about them of if that's the line that you want me to run with, then that can fully be. And so I think like within that, we already are so not not on anyone's eyes as far as who has money in publishing and who's paying for the marketing and all of that. But that experience with Caso Contigo, already having gotten the sense that, you know, my publisher expected this book to fail and was finding any reason for it to fail, and then gladly embraced those reasons in which it could fail. Really just kind of happy to not be there anymore.
I will share something encouraging. You know, like we already know the odds are against us or whatever, and they give you what they give you, but sometimes you can ask things and you already have the no. And I've been surprised, especially in the last year, that I've asked things and the answer has been yes. And so I have taken them. I have taken advantage in a good way, you know, like my other writer friends do, and been happily, pleasantly surprised of my publisher support. So don't discount yourself, and don't. Sometimes, you know, I have thought, oh, I feel like I need to do this pre-order campaign. And then I realized that my publisher already has a plan and they actually executed it. And so it didn't have to come out of my pocket. And I've been surprised by that. It hasn't happened with all of my books. I can count them, you know, with 3 fingers. But the times that it has happened, I've been really, I mean, it's shown, like I can tell the difference. And so ask, open your mouth, because don't be shy.
One of the things that I did is I found that like on Edelweiss, if you go on to like a catalog, then a lot of times they'll put the marketing and publicity plans that they have for you. So I went and like utilized like my lawyer skills and research skills, and I freaking made like spreadsheets of like, oh, who's getting what? Like, what should I even ask for?
Yes.
So it was like, not only was it really disheartening to see the disparity, you know, between like certain people, and then that's just the stuff that they're putting on there. There's like people that then get boxes that like, you know, that they send to influencers that are like hundreds of dollars for people that really don't need that publicity anyway. That those people are going to sell movie units no matter what. But it's like one of the things too that I was like, yeah, I would like have to ask for it. And it was like, you know, again, it's like I'm me, and it's like my agent is also a very similar vibe. So it's like we would ask for a million things, but then it just got like annoying to the point of like, you would think that they would want to make the return on the investment. And then I think what I figured out is like, oh, they will profit, you know, if their investment pays off, but like sometimes a flop, they'll profit off of that too, in the terms of like deducting tax losses, which is like so cynical to think. But I think it's like either way, they're fine. So it's like what I did, it's like I would constantly have to be to like push them for stuff. And I was actually surprised when they would say yes to a lot of things, but then they said no to like a lot of things too. So it was just, the disparity is like always there. And then, yeah, Johnny and I shared like the same publisher. So it's like, I also haven't been, you know, shy about like anything with that. So it's like, yeah, I'm just like also happy that like 2 books with them are out. And if I want to write more books, then it's like, I will explore other options.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything enlightening, but I would like to gripe like Johnny. So with This Is Why They Hate Us, like I went through 2 imprints, 3 editors, and 4 release dates. The last delay was from May to August, which was the most significant one. And it was because my second editor did not send my book out, like did not get a sensitivity read when she said that she had, right? And so that was on the publisher, right? And then she left the business shortly after. But it was like, that was on the publisher. And so my agent was like, hey, like, let's milk this. Like anything you want, like just ask for it. And I knew that I couldn't ask for anything crazy. And, you know, to Shamila's point, like I asked for things because other people got them, and it was reasonable that like I could get what they get because their advance was similar, or, you know, their projected sales were like similar, right? Like I wasn't like comparing myself to Chloe Gong and I'm like, I need you to get me, you know, like I was like, but at one point, it's a really funny story now. But like I said, like the people who blurbed my book, like they're very like successful, really great people. And I was like, I got those on my own. Like no one helped me. Like that was through my connections and like being their readers and like just building those friendships, I got these blurbs. Can you make me blurb graphics? Like, I'm not a Canva person. I can't do that myself. I just don't have it in me. I hate it. I get stressed. Like, can you do that for me? And they said, sure. And so I sent them the blurbs, and then they sent me back 4 out of the 5 graphics. And I said, oh, when are we getting the one from the 5th person? And they were like, oh, it's not in our budget. They created a template. They put the blurb, they changed it for 4 of them, and they wouldn't do it for a 5th one, even when I was like, where's the 5th one? And I was like, it will take you 10 seconds. I assure you it will take you 10 seconds to send me that. But they were like, no. So I hired someone, I paid them like $5 or $10, I forget, to recreate it. And you can obviously tell it's like a different blurb graphic, but I was like, okay, like, great. And then like once, yeah, and then so that's like one story. And then like I feel like once the book was published, like they just forgot that they published my book. Like I don't think they know, like I think the people at the publisher don't know that my book was published by them. Because like, you know, like on another story, like there was one time where they're like 9 books to read if you loved Heartstopper. Heartstopper is about it's a friends to lovers like book. Like one of them, it's a graphic novel, but like one of them is you know, a bisexual boy, and I'm like, mine is a friends to lovers about a bisexual boy, like teenagers, like like how do you not include me on that list? And you know, one thing I will say, again, like TikTok has sort of been like very kind to me in a way, despite it being, you know, oftentimes like racist and homophobic. Because like if I say the word queer, if I say the word bisexual, like the whole thing, not just bi, like it will limit the views on the video. So I have to like use language to get around it. So like even though there are those problems, like I was like, okay, like again, spite is always like a motivator, right? So I was like, I'm gonna make a video and I'm gonna just say, if you like Heartstopper, read my book. And that post that I like, that TikTok that I made, like sold so many more copies than like being included on that listed. And I was like, yes, they're finally going to acknowledge me. And then they didn't. But I'm like, okay, like I can do this by myself then. Like I guess I have to. But yeah, no, it's just it's so funny now. But just sad. And I think, you know, to Jessica's point about like they do make money like before a lot of the time. Well, I think necessarily before you earn out, like they probably make their money back. But also, again, like they're not banking on me to like save the company, they're banking on other people. And so if I don't turn them a profit, they don't care because they're not relying on me, right? And so it's just it's interesting to see that. They didn't send me I could keep going for a while. I only have 2 more gripes, I swear. They didn't send me to the Texas Book Festival, which I could have walked to. I've never been to TLA, and I'm literally a college professor in Texas with a YA book. Like they don't send me anything. Any conference I've been to, it's because I pitched myself or told them to pitch me or have an in with like the organizer. And so that's been like very disappointing. But again, like you know, it's taught me to be self-reliant, I guess.
Yeah, what is it? I think Ina said we did call this the official Chisme session, and I'm so glad that we're living up to that. And then we have one more question, and we'll just like be quick, a lightning round about this question. Shout out like one Latinx writer who has influenced you and your writing and your storytelling. Yeah.
I would say mine. Meg Medina has been such an inspiration for me. I actually wrote my entry and essay for my MFA program on Shaki Delgado Wants to Kick Your Ass. It was just so refreshing and amazing. And Meg herself is so generous and supportive of every Latina author. I feel like every author, and especially her Latina authors, and her writing is just beautiful. And she writes so many different things that I want to be like her when I grow up.
Okay, I think I want to be like Sylvia Moreno Garcia when I grow up. Sylvia, like every single book is like a different genre and it's so different, but it's still like so her voice. she's like always an inspiration to me. So I do eventually want to move into adult, and it's like, yeah, I just like look at everything that she does. I'm just like in awe.
So Victor Villaseñor was like the first Mexican author I ever read, which was crucial. I was like 17 in my junior year of high school. Adam Silvera obviously is like a huge influence with like the dark and the funny. And then also say like, you know, Johnny's first book came out the year before mine, and I remember reading it and being like, damn it, it's good. Like I was like a little mad about it. I was like, wait, I need to like, we were like doing edits, and I was like, I need to step up my game a little bit. Like I can't let Johnny beat me. But no, so I really love 1500 Miles from the Sun, and I'm very excited about the spinoff, Futbolista. But yeah, I'll leave it there.
I'll shout out Rodolfo Anaya. He wouldn't agree with me, but I think Bless Me Ultima is the first queer Mexican book I ever read. Again, he probably doesn't agree, but a little boy who wants to be a priest maybe and like talks to a fish and loves the grandma character, like that's the gayest character I've ever read in my life. And so like reading that was like, yeah, this is the first one I'm seeing myself in a book. And that was just really a really big thing for me. So I would say Rodolfo Anaya. Perfect. And so going back to our final questions, and we'll do like just sort of like a raise of hand on this one, our elephant in the room question of, do you regret getting into traditional publishing? And if it's a solid yes, you can just raise your hand. Incredible. Love that for us. And so, I mean, just to follow up, I think like in that, like what has kept you here? And I feel like we've really touched on that during this hour and a half, but what about just not being a storyteller, but a published author has been worth fighting for your space here, and what keeps you from not regretting stepping into this world that can be pretty awful and like at its best just unequitable to us and our communities? Why do you stick around?
Well, for me, it's the kids. It's when I go and see them and look into their eyes. I just, I'm so honored. I get to share my stories with them. So I keep doing it for them. And also for me, for the kid that I was, that wanted what I have today, and should be so thrilled. And we had a hard life, but we're here.
I love that answer. And right now it's like you just saying that. I think part of it is like for the younger me, but it's like, since we are in the Chisme hour right now, I often think, I don't know if y'all have seen that when like Laura was on that one show that was like the Big Brother type thing, and she's like defeated, and then she's like, pues no me voy, like van a saber con quién se metieron, like, so she's like, yeah, I'm gonna stay, I'm gonna show these people who they messed with. So I think spite, I'll end it on something petty. I think spite keeps me in, and I'm a petty person, and spite sometimes can make you do great things, and if the byproduct of that is also keeping the door open, it's like I know that it's like a lot of the people who are like doing this now, like we're not going to necessarily see like the benefits of what our work is doing for like other, like, for other people. So it's like, if I help keep that door open, maybe I won't get to walk through it all the way. If I could hold it open for someone else, that's enough for me.
We love spite. We really do. So I used to be, well, I still want to be a screenwriter, but like back in college, I really like, that was my number one goal. And I think what I loved was the fact that like words become, right. Like it's like people say them, movies are made, TV's made. Like I just loved like the transformation from word on page to just everything. Right. And it's, I found that with writing a book as well, right? Like we start with words, and then you get a cover, and then you get, like a physical book that you can hold and say like, this is mine. And you can go to a bookstore and you can see it. And, you do panels and you do festivals and you meet people who read it, and, people like invent things. Like I would love to read fan fiction. Like I don't know where you find fan fiction I've never read in my entire life, but I would like so selfishly like love to just read people's interpretations of my characters and like putting them in different situations. And like, you know, we sold like one foreign territory, and it's like my book's going to be in Polish and in Poland, and it's like, that's wild. I was like, I've never been to Poland. I never thought of Poland as a country that I like would have a kinship with. But it's like, now I'm like Poland's the best country in the world. Like it's, you know, it's amazing. So just the reach of everything, yeah, just like everything that came from just like me sitting down and like typing stuff, like it's all very beautiful. And as much as I complain, like I like, you know, the last question, like I don't regret getting into it. I wish it were better and we can make it better, but like, you know, it's a magical, beautiful thing that I've also like Shamila like, and I'm guessing Jessica and Johnny like wanted since I was a kid. I don't know, maybe not Johnny was like, I'm gonna be riding bulls. No, yeah, no, it's just it's a dream come true, and again, like a kind of problematic dream, but.
Yeah, I think maybe we'd like to highlight a bunch of y'all. Like it really is, you know, especially whenever we see the young people that we write for and how I was at a Barnes and Noble today, like doing a signing, and like not even just the young people, but like I had like parents being like, "Oh, I'm going to buy this for my child. They would love this." And like I got to meet a woman with like a high school kid who like is in the middle of transitioning and figuring out their gender, and it's like in between like non-binary and trans and mask, and I was like, I have the book for you, oh my god. And so like not like young people, yes, but also just seeing like the generations above them, the Gen Xers and even like older millennials now who are parents and are trying to build that equitable society for their kids, and using our text to do that is just like so moving. You know, like I did not grow up wanting to be a writer. I grew up wanting to be AOC basically, and so like, but like in my head, like it was always just like I want to do something that like makes the world just a little bit better whenever I leave it. And I think like falling into this just so randomly, and you know, still being able to be here, kind of like Kool-Aid personing my way into publishing and not having gotten kicked out yet, has really just been that way for me to see the ways in which something that I can do and provide for my culture and the young people who grew up like me, you know, not feel so alone in the ways that I did whenever I was their age, is something that feels so superhuman, and really addicting whenever you finally get to feel that way. So yeah, like they're gonna have to pry that away from me for sure. Cute. And that's it for us. I think we are basically on the hour and a half time. We really did like perfect, y'all. That's the end. Thank you all for attending Writers Night, sponsored by the Authors Guild and the Mistakes Were Made panel and the Latinx Kidlit Book Festival. It's going on. We're just getting started, so check out all of the panels and things that they're providing you all month long. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
My fellow panelists.